What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over the explanation of the rest of the stuff. You can all read the report. I'm going to get the analysts up on the stage, who I think are all here. I think I can see you all. So I'm going to ask Raúl Castañon and Nick Lane and Amy and Ferry to join me on stage. And we're just going to have a bit of a chat about numbers and things. So do come up. This is probably not a bad slide to leave us on, actually, the where's the money slide. What I'll ask you to do...
We can give you a round of applause. It was very interesting.
Oh, thank you. So you'll forgive me, I felt kind of lonely in justifying 100 billion all by myself. So I invited some colleagues who are all hiding up that end of the stage, I noticed, which is Nick. Let me hand over another microphone to you guys. May I ask you to introduce yourselves? I'm going to start with Nick, as you've been brave and sat up this end with me, and then just pass it down the end.
Hi everyone, I'm Nick Lane, Chief Messaging Officer at MobileSquared. We specialise in business messaging, doing lots of analysis and forecasts.
Thank you, Nick.
Hi, I'm Amy. Can you hear me, guys? Failed at the first hurdle here. Excellent. Hi, I'm Amy Cameron. I'm from STL Partners. I'm the managing director of the research business there, where we do a lot of research looking at the future of telecoms and new business models and technologies. And one of the topics that we have lots of coverage on is network APIs. So rather a tiny sliver of Andrew's chart, but maybe it could be bigger.
Maybe.
I'll use yours. Mine's not working. My name is Ferry Grijpink. I'm a big reader of her research, especially Darren's research from STL, but I'm from McKinsey. I lead our 5G practice, do a lot of work on network APIs and CPaaS. Very excited to be here.
Raúl Castañon, I'm with S&P. I think most people are still familiar with Standard & Poor's. I am in the industry analyst division. I have been working on telecommunications, CPaaS, and now network APIs, I think for over 10 years. So happy to be here.
Thank you. So I've really got a great panel. I'll just tell you the way I think about them, okay? They've been very modest about themselves. So Nick, I think, has got probably the strongest view I've seen on the business messaging market. I'm going to call on your expertise quite a lot in that space, and I'd like to talk about those things. Amy, I've known for some time. We used to be colleagues. And I think STL has always been ahead in its knowledge of the opportunities in APIs and sort of two-sided business model space, because we worked on it for a long time in the new business. So we've looked at it for a long time and been waiting for it to evolve. And you've got some really interesting forecasts, which I'd like to talk about. Ferry was one of the originators of the 100 billion to 300 billion number, which is always a bit of a kind of blessing and a curse, a big number. And it's clearly something that the industry wants to push. But, you know, it's worth just talking about that. That's in the API space, but it'd be valuable to get your perspective on CPaaS and the opportunity more broadly as well. And Raúl at S&P Global, I think, from what I've seen, because they were kind enough to share a bunch of stuff with me, they've got some really fantastic bottom-up market analysis of individual players, you know, the values and so on. They've got some really interesting stuff there. And so I called on all of these resources in order to try and figure out, well, where do you get the 100 billion from? Because using the 100 billion is quite a good way to think about how do you grow the market, because it's a much more tangible way to do it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just start with you, Nick, because I think, I realized when I started to look at that 100 billion number that your forecast took us some of the way there. Tell me a bit more about what you think about not just RCS, but the whole messaging space, because a large chunk of the chart you've drawn is about messaging. What do you think about it? And where are you feeling now? Have you changed since we spoke in, whenever it was, March, April, when you did your first presentation?
Yeah, everything changes.
You've got it's working. Thanks, yeah.
It is on.
Is it working?
So we update our forecast now.
It's not working, is it?
Is it not? That's working.
Is it? Oh, okay. Okay, carry on. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Drop the quiet one. That's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Is that working? Oh, Christ.
Yeah. There we go.
All right, that was working.
Yeah.
So we So I think our forecasts are about $52, $55 billion. Can't remember off the top of my head. They change quite a lot. So we've just slashed them actually, primarily because we've applied the new WhatsApp rates to our forecasts. So we were projecting WhatsApp to be about $19 billion in 2029, but primarily just really on the back of their new rates, where they're really going aggressively after the utility and the authentication traffic on SMS. Those rates now down to about 11 or 12 billion for 2029.
So have they halved their prices or thereabouts?
It varies on the market. I mean, India, they've doubled the rates. So that means, and obviously India was one of their biggest markets. So by doubling it, there's a quite big spam problem there. So by doubling, it's really going to have a big impact and really kind of hopefully clean up the market from their perspective. But again, that means that we've had to slash a lot of the growth that we had in India. But in other markets, no. I mean, they've dropped the rate, so it's less than, or it's around about 1 cent for most utility and authentication traffic. And just to put that into perspective, on domestic traffic, we've got utility and authentication traffic globally about 80% of all traffic, and on international, it's around 90%. So again, they're really aggressively going after the whole of the SMS marketplace.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing to be very wary about, and obviously that's also going to have an impact on our CPaaS forecast.
Yeah.
RCS is kind of encouraging and not encouraging. So we're hearing that in markets, so for example, China, it's mandated through the regulator that all SMS traffic has to be delivered via RCS by the end of next year. So that's had a big bump on our forecast. However, everything's still being really slow. So, for example, the US, all the major carriers are now ready to launch RBM. They've all signed up to Apple, so they've got iOS support, which is obviously going to be very key. But there are issues with pricing, there are issues in terms of verification. So it means that the RCS or the RBM adoption is still being really slow, and the US is going to be a really key market. So again, these have an impact on CPaaS. So our CPaaS forecasts up to 2029 probably dropped by about 3 or 4 billion. But again, they're always very fluid.
Because I use the old ones in this, so that would probably have a bit of a drop down on that. I don't know if I can just go to you, Ferry, from your perspective. McKinsey is obviously looking at a wide range of industrial disruption and change and so forth. Do you think that CPaaS, I mean, I use the word CPaaS, in my mind it's intelligent engagement, it's all the same thing. People are trying to improve the way that businesses are interacting with their customers and partners, principally. Do you see growth in this area, or do you see sort of essentially like opportunities for growth continually killed by disruptive changes like the WhatsApp price decreases or cloud players coming in? What do you see?
And that's where the network APIs come in. Sometimes that communication has to be fully silent for the customer so that on the times when you do need them to engage, they will engage, because every other time when you don't actually need them to do anything, they just don't do anything. And so I think there's two sides to that coin when you look at the wider story. You know, for instance, if you're trying to, verify your ID or authenticate a transaction, like if you can avoid having to, put a number in, then avoid that.
Yeah, I think it's more fun to disagree, but I finally agree that. But again, it's that skill which the CPaaS players are perfecting to find the customer at the moment. Sometimes silent, sometimes actively. But I think that skill of finding the customer is the skill you need to hone. And then what's below that? Could it be network APIs, is it RCS, or is it WhatsApp, or whatever will come up in a Ray-Ban Meta sunglasses? Again, that skill is going to be very powerful, even silent.
So I'm just interested, because in a way, thinking about it, Amy and Ferry are kind of representing the future, the kind of what's the potential, what's the opportunity. And Nick and Raúl come from a long history of tracking the market and seeing what it actually does. So I'd like to ask Raúl next, if someone could pass him a working microphone. Raúl, what's your gut feel? Do you think the market can grow? Do you think the industry can grow? Because we just heard a bit of bad news from Nick. Oh, yeah, the rate's gone down a bit. What do you think? Where's your gut feel?
Yeah, thank you. So when we started doing our forecast for CPaaS, we were getting a lot of questions, and I think a bit of pushback, mainly from technology vendors, saying that our view was kind of conservative. It has a lot to do with the methodology, and for this reason, we started complementing that with scenarios, and then the what if, what happens. So our methodology, as you well know, is bottom up, meaning we look at some of the leaders, or most of the market leaders, and based on that, we try to foresee what will happen with the industry as a whole. What I see right now, and I think following what my colleagues have mentioned here, is that we're still talking about potential, meaning certain factors, certain things have to happen to get to that growth. I could even argue that our expectations for growth are even higher than what we have discussed here already, but a number of things have to happen. And Nick mentioned that the industry seems to be evolving slowly. It really depends on where you're standing. If you're trying to keep up your forecast up to date, it seems like it's going too fast, honestly. I do see a number of factors coming together right now that I think point to not only steady but exponential growth. Well, one of the key ones I could argue is network APIs. In the scenarios that we figured out, we see it as actually even pushing CPaaS further. So you have like layers that add up, and the end result is actually exponential. So we're still talking about potential.
I think the interesting thing, my view, the interesting thing about APIs is the potential's great, but you're relying on operators. And I love operators to bits. I've worked with them. I was in one for 20 years. I've worked with them for 20 years. But speed is not what operators are great at. And that's my perspective.
Speed and new business models. The reality is that the way that operators have sold all of their services over all their history is they're selling to different customers, and they're selling different types of services and a different business model. And thus far, very few operators have proven that they're comfortable doing that they can do that. And I completely agree with Raúl that it's a potential. And we see a lot of potential there. We see a lot of opportunity there. We've surveyed developers to understand if things around network performance or device information or that kind of stuff is stuff they're interested in. And they are interested. But if operators don't make a move and sell it and expose those capabilities, then that's all that remains is a potential. And we had to downgrade our forecasts as well. Not by a lot by 2030, but significantly in the early years, because the services are just not available. And obviously, if they're not available, you can't sell them.
Yeah. And actually, just while we're on that point, STL's forecast came out something like 31 billion by 2030. And we were talking about this before. It's slightly different from the other forecasts, I think, in the sense that the other forecasts I looked at were forecasts on actual rates. Could you just comment on the 31 billion?
Yeah, so if you compare us to the Omdias or Analysts, Mason, what we are forecasting is a bottom up of the use cases. So we're looking at use cases that would want to leverage mobile network APIs. So for instance, you're looking at things like connected cars or video analysis, or obviously there's the anti-fraud use cases, and we're looking at sort of a bottom-up analysis of that. So how many ID checks are banks going to want to make? Or how many connected vehicles do we think they're going to be? And what kind of network requirements are they going to need? What kind of device information are they going to want? And all of this kind of stuff. What kind of video is going to need to be analyzed? And so we're looking at all of those use cases and thinking about how can mobile network APIs enable those use cases? And that's how we make our growth trajectory. And what that means is that we're looking at, again, even more potential than some of the other markets, because we're looking at those use cases and they're going to be served in other ways. So on Andrew's chart, you had the mobile network APIs. What we're saying is there's a lot of anti-fraud that could be served by mobile network APIs. On your chart, it's probably being served by SMS. or something else. And so we're putting a chunk of that in our forecast. And the other thing is that we're forecasting some APIs which are not currently in the Kamara Open Gateway set. So for instance, we have one which is about future network performance, because we've seen from our survey of developers that there is interest in understanding how is the network going to perform at this time, in this location, at a future time. And that's a good sort of indicator of potential demand for on-demand networking services. And that API, sort of predictive network performance, is not part of the Kamara set. So there are a few things that mean that we're looking at a wider opportunity than some of the other forecasts, which are really just looking at the current set of Kamara APIs and revenues attached to that.
Thanks, Amy. Ferry, you were frowning.
Can I quickly comment on that? And again, as a guy with the streams on his back for the 300 billion prediction, I've studied all these analyst reports. And sorry to mansplain your own report to you, I really compared line by line all the things. I think what STL does more is enablement revenue. So like 7-8 billion of enablement revenue, edge compute, which is in their prediction. And the second part what I see is that the single CSP use cases. So when I look at what media and Analysis Mason have, it's all aggregated. And so if Verizon or AT&T or KPN directly sells an API, it's typically not part of the forecast, which is in your forecast. So therefore, it is true that if you look at these numbers, they're very different, but they're all very different things. If you peel them up, you're still more optimistic, but the gap is not 32 to about 10-ish, but it's more 31 to about 17, 18. So it's actually quite interesting. So I nerded out on all these numbers for weeks. So anybody wants to make an analysis and comparison, happy to give you the 5 in a row and really try to see the differences. Because the reality is but everybody says it's a massive potential. So that's...
is that free, by the way? That's good value from McKinsey, a free analysis. So, thank you.
I didn't know we sold you our latest forecast, Ferry.
You did.
I want to come on to actions. Okay, so I put out some actions based on what I heard from everyone, what I read in all the stuff. I'm going to try and just get to the chart if I can. It might take me a little while to get all this to move on. Actually, can I just ask you, you know the chart at the beginning that shows like the summary of the actions? Could you get the thing onto this so that I don't drive everyone nuts by going through it all? Thank you. What if you were right? I'm going to put you guys. You're the analysts. You are now the CEO of the industry formerly known as CPaaS, but people sitting in this room. What would your priorities be to grow the market as fast as possible? I put kind of some views on here. You're very welcome to use my or just ignore them and come up with something completely different. I'm going to start with you, Nick, because I know you're in the here and now as much, and some of the things we talk about. What would you do? What are the key actions? Oh, it's working. There we go.
It's working. Key actions. I'll do about education. I mean, I know it's a bit cliched, but I mean, from our forecasts, even now on CPaaS, about 75% of spend on brands on CPaaS, according to our data, is pretty much one way, so unidirectional. So over our forecast period, we expect more of that spend. By about 2030, about half of the spend will be on two-way channels. So the opportunity for engagement is certainly there, and that's given an opportunity. But a lot of the time, it's kind of, I think something you mentioned about how people engage. People genuinely don't engage with brands. You don't want to. The only time you really call the customer care or the call centres because you're a bit miffed with something, or there's an issue that you need to resolve. You go into a shop, if anyone tries to help you, certainly being British, you go, no, I'm browsing, leave me alone. But again, that's kind of the only way, certainly a lot of people engage with brand, or knowingly open like a two-way dialogue with a brand. So again, I think you've got to kind of look at how do we then retrain consumers to openly start to engage with the brand. Because I think when you start to get that point, then all of a sudden the chatbots will become more accepted within consumers. And I think that's really what it will come down to. And then you'll start to see more brands investing in, because even looking at the majority of CPaaS providers today, most of their revenues comes from SMS. That's very much obviously
and that's going to change, is the theory.
It will change, because if you look at where brands always spend money where the eyeballs are. So if you're looking at something like messaging, I think SMS is a bad example because it's quite a small market, given that you've got every mobile user can obviously receive an SMS. So again, that's been massively underutilised, but the opportunity for something like rich messaging is massive. You've now got nearly probably 4 or 5 billion, can't remember the number, rich messaging users around the world. So gradually that spend will filter down. If you look at the annualised ARPU for messaging, it's about $5 a year. If you look at mobile advertising, and that comes back to a point what you were saying again with the chart on digital marketing and 600 billion, as that opportunity, the annualised ARPU on mobile advertising is $70. So you kind of think, other industries are doing a much better job than the telco and the comm space when it comes to kind of monetising its own customers. So I think that there is a massive opportunity, but it's, again, how do we unlock that? And I don't think anyone's really found
is
that.
educating, you say customers, you educating consumers or enterprises, brands you mean?
Both.
Okay.
Again, because I think, the conversations we have, a lot of CPaaS guys are then saying we talk to our customers, and they, again, who then owns that relationship? I guess chatbots can come in. I think that's why chatbots are being used in customer care, because 60 or 70% of all inquiries are almost kind of formulaic from the consumer's perspective. So it's easy for a chatbot to kind of deal with those queries. But it's a 30%, 40% that it can't, where you probably need an agent, and it might escalate, and then obviously the consumer.
Okay.
But something like marketing, you don't know what that is going to be.
Okay, so education, particularly, I guess, the brands, to start with, I would have said particularly RCS, because it's the least well understood. I thought, okay. So I'm going to go Raúl, Amy, and then Ferry in that order, just to warn you. So Raúl, what would your priority be to grow the market?
Well, I could recap on what Amy was saying. The services have to be there to be consumed. So I really think that could be the first step. Obviously, you have to decide which services, at what point, how to package them, and so on. That could be the first thing. And secondly, I could emphasize, and this is not a secret, it's been said several times, but I could reinforce that if you look at the trajectory of CPaaS, going back to the very early days of Twilio, Nexmo, how that came to be, I think there's a very clear path in terms of what needs to happen next. Who were the groundbreakers, the digital innovations that took place with the Ubers, Netflix, and so on, how they leverage all these communication APIs. So I think the path is clear. These companies, Infobip, Sinch, they already have that developer community. They have the know-how. So I think that's the path to follow.
Okay. Amy? I was going to go Amy and then Ferry, because I'm just going sort of...
Okay, that's fine. You leave the hardest job to Ferry. We will have said everything, but I'm sure he'll have more after.
I'll disagree with you.
Oh, excellent, good. Well, I think it's one, echoing Raúl, get your anti-fraud identity services on the market now. Get them on there yesterday. If the other operators in your market are not cooperating, do everything you can to get them on board so that you can get your market coverage for this. Two, explore the options that are more direct. So in tandem, you need to be thinking about the things where you're less dependent on having your competitors also offering the same service, and that's really around location is where we see the next biggest bucket, and it doesn't depend so much on having that broad industry coverage because a lot of it is related to IoT, and that will usually, it doesn't have the same consent requirements because it's for a certain enterprise customer, it's for the SIMs that they own, and so the benefit of that is, one, that you can go direct, but also you bundle it in with all of your other IoT services. And so it's a more direct revenue opportunity for telcos. And so really looking at location, how you can build on top of what you're doing in IoT or other location services is really the next bet. And then finally, get your 5G standalone going, because there's no network opportunity without 5G standalone. And long term, that's the biggest bucket for telcos.
Okay, that's for telcos. Understood.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking for telcos. I don't really know the wider market enough to comment. I think I'll leave that to people who know better than me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Let's first keep my promise. I fully agree with Amy. Especially on getting the APIs exposed and getting 5G SA up. If I look at CPaaS, let me take a little different direction. And who of you would trust a direct message in Instagram of somebody you don't know? Raise your hand if you would open it. Nobody. So Instagram Meta has a terrible track record on creating trust. We as an industry, and I talk CPaaS now, also have a pretty terrible track record. 10 to 30% of our traffic is inflated. So if we really want to be that player that is responsible for where you can trust it as a consumer, hey, I really want to interact with this brand, we just need to make sure that we clean up our act. So my sense is, if we want to be the people that can deliver the right message at the right time, sometimes silent, sometimes active, we need to make sure we're trusted. And I think there's a real work to be done to be more trusted, because being a trust broker, making sure RCS is really trusted, that a message you get, if you now get an SMS and you're not 100% sure, you don't react. If I get an Instagram message, I don't react. If I get a Facebook Messenger message, I don't react. So can we, with RCS or whatever model we come up with, really create a place where we can create trusted communication? Because then we create a tremendous amount of value. Because then we can find the customer at the right time, at the right moment, in the right way.
Okay. So a range of answers. What I'd like to do is I'm just going to get a quick, do a little bit of audience interaction. I'd like to take a couple of questions. But before I do that, so think about your questions and get ready, because we've only got time for 2. So get ready with a quick show of hands for your question for myself or the analysts. Who in this room, so what I want you to do is I want you to indicate your view on where the industry will go. So if you think the industry will go steady as it goes, stay seated. If you think the industry is going to grow sort of to the mid-range, raise yourself halfway out of your seat into a sort of standing crunch. And if you think it's going to get to 100 billion, stand right up. So let's see a show, not a show of hands, a show of body position where the industry is going to be, in your view. Come on, have a bet. Nobody's going to take the mickey out of you. So, now you see, this is where social comparison comes in. Looking around, who's going to do what, who's going to say. So we've got a real mix. Okay, thanks very much. That was a laugh, thank you. So we've got a mix, and I don't blame you, by the way. I don't think anybody knows. I think the degree of uncertainty and the degree of, the variables in this. I think one thing I want to add before I come back to your questions is missing from all of our dialogue is the whole thing, the whole VCons thing, the whole AI, how you use the data, how you mine the data. So bear in mind, from what you've heard, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's not here yet because it's not fully developed in our understanding and our imagination. So I think, to me, that's quite important. And I'm going to go back to what I said to you in the first place. I think you do, you need to talk about the industry a different way. I'm going to paraphrase this by when I first started talking to my wife about talking to CPaaS. She said, "What's CPaaS?" And I explained it. She said, "Oh, it's a terrible name for a brilliant service." And I thought that's probably the most accurate point that I could bring over at this point. That is what you have to change. You have to change how you communicate and what you're communicating about. And I think you need to communicate about your benefits and the values. And the stuff you're talking about is right, but we're all falling in the same trap. This stuff does great work. RCS communicates better because you can get more over to a customer about what you're selling. The network APIs work better because you don't necessarily have to do anything. You can just authenticate the customer. That's great. We love it. We need to get on to benefits. Anyway, enough about me. Let's hear about you for at least 3 minutes. Any questions? First hand up. Chap at the back there. Sorry, I don't know if we've got a microphone, so you might have to shout. Oh, there's a box. Someone's going to throw a box at you in a minute. Carry on. I'll give you my quick take on it, and then I'll pass it to the channel. My quick take is just what I told you. You need to communicate differently. You need to explain what it is you provide and the benefits differently. Stop talking technology, start talking outcomes. You need to educate to pick up. I think this is true across the whole piece. I think you're doing a brilliant technology job, and your communications needs to change. You know, but it's not that you're doing a bad job of communicating, it's you need to think differently about the communication. Put it in the benefits, not in the product. But I'll come back to the rest of the market, because I've given you a chance to think about the question now. How would you change the go-to-market? Raúl?
Yeah, so the first thing I could say regarding the authentication, I'm with Amy. That's the opportunity right now. I could, however, change the messaging because it should be about the user experience. So changing the conversation from security, it's really about how you eliminate friction in the user experience. And I think that was kind of the silent experience that Amy was saying. I think that has to be the conversation. In terms of who's going to champion this, again, just look at the path that CPaaS followed. It's about aggregation. It's about having that layer. The conversation about developers has been going back and forth, and telcos don't know how to talk to them. Infobase, HCM, they already have that community. So that's already there for telcos to take advantage of. So anyway, just my 2 cents here.
I would just add, yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but building on that, you've asked who's going to provide the skills to do this. Yeah, sure, telcos are going to say we don't have the skills. People are not going to do it for you just because you don't have the skills. You've got to find a way to get those skills. If you don't know how to get them, then think about, okay, who's the customer who's using this? You know, let's look in Brazil. TikTok is a big fan of the customer authentication pathway. You go to your customer and you say, I know you want to use this elsewhere. I really need help figuring out how to scale this. Can you help me find the skills? Like, I mean, be creative, but nobody's going to do it for the telcos. Like, if telcos don't do it, then there'll just be another solution instead.
Any final thoughts to contribute? So we've come out to the end of our time. I think in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say thank you very much to the panel. Thank you. Rob, what are we going to now? Back to Nikolai, sorry. Nikolai, may I hand back to you? But can I just ask you to give a round of applause to the panel and thank them for their contribution. Thank you very much. And if you want to chat later, come and talk and give me your ideas about what we should do next. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I love the enthusiasm. Thanks to the panel again for sharing your views. And I think all of us, hopefully, we're a little bit smarter now. While I still have a lot of questions, so thank you for all. And then, again, use the time afterwards to discuss and follow up. I think for me, the excitement, yes, I still and hope, and also the next one and over the next 2 days, we drill one step deeper in the famous concept of the ICP, the ideal customer profile, because I think that's the next part of it, right? So yes, we talk about the communication platforms, but we talk about big numbers, and there's a lot of different customers behind it. And I like really the question on the go-to-market. Who are we actually targeting? How are we targeting? And how are we convincing them? Because technology is there. There are certainly the opportunities. Now it's us for reaping them. In that regard,